The talks between Earth and Zinthar continued, but the tension was high. Both sides were unsure if peace could last. Many on Zinthar still saw Lyra as a rebel, and some humans feared the powerful aliens. But Lyra was determined to change that. One morning, during a meeting between leaders from both worlds, Lyra stood tall and spoke clearly. "We are stronger together," she said. "My child is a symbol of a new future, a future where humans and Zintharians live in peace and learn from each other." Some leaders on Zinthar frowned, but others nodded slowly. Jack watched Lyra with pride. She was no longer just a princess. She was a bridge between worlds. To show their commitment, Lyra suggested a joint project. Earth and Zinthar would work together to build a new space station, a place for both species to meet, share ideas, and protect each other. The idea surprised many. It was a bold step, but it gave hope to those who wanted peace. Meanwhile, back on Earth, people prepared for the baby's arrival. Lyra's strength and courage inspired many. She spoke at gatherings, telling stories of her journey and dreams for the future. The space station project began with scientists from both worlds working side by side. Humans shared their creativity and resilience, while Zintharians offered their advanced technology and knowledge. Slowly, the two cultures began to understand each other better. Humans learned about the stars and distant planets. Zintharians learned about Earth's diverse cultures and history. Lyra's child became a symbol of unity. Both worlds watched closely, hopeful that this new life would bring peace and friendship. One evening, as the first stars appeared, Lyra and Jack stood together, looking at the progress of the space station in orbit. "This is more than a building," Lyra said softly. "It is a promise." Jack smiled. "A promise that we will not let fear divide us." The alliance was fragile but growing. Challenges remained, but Lyra believed that love and understanding could overcome even the greatest differences. As the stars shone above, Lyra felt hope deep in her heart. She was no longer a joke, no longer a lost princess. She was a mother, a leader, and a symbol of a future where two very different worlds could become one. The day finally arrived. Lyra's time to give birth was near, and the entire community stood by her side, humans and Zintharians alike. The space station, a shining symbol of unity between their worlds, orbited silently above Earth, watching over them. Lyra lay in a simple room, filled with soft light and the gentle hum of machines. Jack held her hand, his eyes full of love and hope. Around them were doctors from both Earth and Zinthar, ready to help bring new life into the world. The labor was long and hard. Lyra's strength surprised everyone. She was no longer the spoiled princess who had been sent away as a joke. She was a mother fighting for her child and the future of two worlds. Finally, with a cry that filled the room, their baby was born. A small child with bright eyes that seemed to hold the stars themselves. Lyra and Jack smiled through their tears. "This child is more than our hope," Lyra whispered. "They are the future." News of the birth spread quickly. Both planets celebrated. People saw in this child a promise, proof that humans and aliens could come together, not as enemies, but as family. The royal court of Zinthar, once divided and angry, now stood united in awe and respect. Even King Velen, who had sent Lyra away as a joke, acknowledged the strength and courage of his daughter. Lyra held her child close, feeling a deep sense of peace. She thought of her journey, the crash, the struggles, the friendships, and the battles. Every step had led to this moment. Jack kissed her forehead gently. "We did it. Together." The space station began to grow, becoming a place of learning, peace, and cooperation. Scientists, artists, and leaders from both worlds shared their knowledge and dreams. Lyra often stood by the windows, watching Earth below and the stars beyond. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but now she had hope, love, and a family that crossed galaxies. Her story was no longer a joke. It was a legend, a story of bravery, change, and the power of unity. As the sun rose on a new day, Lyra whispered softly, This is only the beginning. And with that, the future of Earth and Zinthar shined bright. Together, Princess Leora stood on the balcony of the great palace, looking out at the glowing city of Velindra. The sky was filled with stars and the soft hum of flying ships. But Leora's heart was heavy. Tomorrow, she would meet the human who was to become her husband, a human called Captain Jarek, known far and wide as Brutal. The people of Velindra had heard stories about him, a fierce warrior, cold and tough, a man who fought many wars and showed little mercy. The news made her uneasy. How could she marry such a man? She was raised to be gentle, kind, and wise. This marriage was not for love, but for peace between her people and the humans. Yet, the thought of being with someone so harsh filled her with fear. Inside the palace, the rooms were filled with busy servants and advisors. Everyone was preparing for the arrival of the human captain. Leora's mother, Queen Syra, had called her to the throne room that morning. Her mother's eyes were kind but serious. "My daughter," Queen Syra said softly, "this marriage is important. Our worlds need peace, and you are the key. Captain Jarek is strong and brave. You must see the man behind the stories." Leora nodded, but her worry did not fade. She wanted to believe her mother, but the image of the brutal captain was hard to erase. That evening, Leora walked through the palace gardens. The glowing flowers lit her path, but her thoughts were dark. She wished she could meet Jarek without all the royal rules and expectations. What kind of man was he really? Could they find something in common? Suddenly, a message arrived from the spaceport. The human ship had entered Velindran space and was landing soon. The moment was coming faster than she hoped. The next day, the great hall filled with guests from many planets. Leora stood beside her mother, her heart pounding. The doors opened, and Captain Jarek walked in. He was taller and broader than any Velindran man she had seen. His face was serious, with sharp eyes that seemed to look right through her. He wore simple clothes, but there was a strength in his walk, a confidence that filled the room. The crowd whispered about the human warrior, some admiring, others wary. Jarek approached slowly, his eyes meeting Leora's for the first time. He spoke in a deep voice. "Princess Leora, I am honored to meet you." Leora bowed slightly, her voice steady despite the nerves. "Captain Jarek, welcome to Velindra." As they stood there, Leora's fear began to mix with curiosity. Maybe the stories did not tell the whole truth. Maybe, if she looked closer, she would find something more than just a brutal human. The first step of their journey had begun. The great spaceport of Velindra buzzed with activity. Ships of all sizes landed and took off, but everyone's eyes were on one ship, the human captain's vessel. It was a large gray ship with sharp edges and strong engines. It looked nothing like the smooth, shining ships of the Velindrans. Captain Jarek stepped off his ship, his boots making firm sounds on the platform. His face was hard and serious, the kind that made people keep their distance. Soldiers and officials stood at attention as he walked toward the waiting royal convoy. His eyes scanned the crowd quickly, always alert. Leora watched from the palace window, her heart racing. The man everyone called Brutal was real, standing only a few miles away. She had heard he was harsh and tough, but seeing him in person made those stories feel even bigger. He looked like a man made for war, not for marriage. As Jarek entered the palace, the halls seemed too quiet. He was a stranger in this bright, soft world. His rough voice echoed against the smooth walls. "Where is the princess?" he asked one of the palace guards. "Here, Captain," the guard replied politely. "She will meet you soon." Jarek's eyes softened just a little. He knew this meeting was important, not just for politics, but for peace between their two worlds. The princess was waiting in the royal gardens. The soft light of Velindra's twin moons made the flowers glow, and the air was filled with sweet scents. But Leora's nerves were strong. She didn't want to show fear, but she felt it inside. Jarek stepped into the garden and stopped when he saw her. For a moment, he said nothing. His gaze was steady and thoughtful, not like the brutal man people described. "Princess Leora," he said quietly, "you look very different from what I expected." Leora blinked. "And you look less frightening than the stories." Jarek smiled faintly. Stories often grow bigger than the truth. They began to walk slowly among the glowing flowers. Neither spoke much at first, both unsure what to say. Lyra looked at him closely, the small scar near his eye, the way his hands moved carefully when he touched a flower. "Why do people call you brutal?" she asked after a while. Jarek sighed. "Because I fight hard. I protect those I care for without mercy, but that is only part of who I am." Leora nodded slowly. "I am afraid of the stories, but maybe I am afraid of you too." Jarek stopped and looked at her. "Fear is normal, but we must learn to see beyond it." The night grew deeper, and for the first time, Leora felt a small hope. Maybe this brutal human was more than a warrior. Maybe he could be her partner, her friend, even more. But the real challenge was still ahead. Could they trust each other enough to face the future together? The grand hall of the palace was decorated with shining lights and elegant banners from both Valindra and Earth. Important leaders and diplomats filled the room, their eyes quietly watching every move. The air was tense. This meeting was more than a greeting. It was the first step toward joining two very different worlds. Princess Leora stood beside her mother, her hands folded calmly, but inside she felt a storm of worry. Captain Jarek entered the hall, tall and strong, his face unreadable. His reputation as a harsh warrior seemed to fill the room with a cold energy. Jarek looked around once, then fixed his gaze on Leora. "Princess Leora," he said in a voice steady but firm, "I am here as agreed by our leaders." Leora bowed her head respectfully. "Captain Jarek, welcome to Valindra. I hope we can find peace between our peoples." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Peace is earned, not given." The room grew quiet. The two stood still, like statues carved from different worlds. The formal ceremony began. Advisors spoke about treaties and trade, about how this marriage would end years of conflict. But Leora's mind drifted, watching Jarek. He was polite, but every word was careful and sharp. He didn't smile or relax. To her, he seemed cold and distant. After the speeches, they were expected to speak alone. In a smaller chamber, the mood changed. It was quieter, but no warmer. Leora tried to find a connection. "Captain, I understand you have seen many battles. It must be hard to carry that weight." Jarek's eyes softened for a moment. War changes a man, but it also teaches him what is worth protecting. She nodded, feeling a flicker of understanding. "I protect my people, too. Maybe we are not so different." He looked away. Perhaps. The silence grew heavy. Neither wanted to be the first to break it. Leora wished she could say more, but the words felt trapped inside her. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the palace entrance. Guards rushed past them, alert and tense. "We must investigate," Jarek said quickly, his warrior instincts kicking in. Lyra followed him, her heart racing. This was her chance to see the man behind the armor. They reached the main hall to find a group of rebels trying to disrupt the ceremony. Jarek moved fast, commanding the guards with sharp orders. His actions were efficient, powerful, but not cruel. He protected everyone, including Leora. After the danger passed, the crowd cheered. Leora looked at Jarek with new eyes. The brutal man was strong, yes, but he was also careful and protective. As the night ended, Leora felt her fear begin to fade, replaced by a cautious hope. Maybe this arranged marriage was the start of something greater. The palace was quiet after the night's disturbance. The guests had returned to their rooms, and the celebration was paused. But for Princess Leora, the evening had only just begun. She found herself walking alone in the long hallways, her mind racing with thoughts about Captain Jarek. The man everyone called brutal seemed different from the fierce warrior she had imagined. There was something hidden beneath his tough exterior, something gentle, even kind. As she turned a corner, she caught sight of him. Jarek was standing near the window, looking out at the stars. His strong face was softer in the moonlight, his eyes thoughtful. He didn't notice her at first. Lyra stepped closer. "Captain Jarek." He turned quickly, then relaxed when he saw it was her. "Princess Lyra, you shouldn't be wandering alone." She smiled softly. "Neither should you." For a moment, they stood side by side, looking out at the glowing city below. The silence was comfortable, a rare thing between two people who barely knew each other. "I don't understand your world," Jarek said quietly. "It is so different from Earth. Sometimes I feel lost." Lyra nodded. "I feel the same way about your world. I've heard so many stories about humans, but I don't know the real you." He looked at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Maybe I am not what you expected." "No," she said gently. "You are more." They talked then, in low voices, sharing small pieces of their lives. Lyra told him about the traditions of the Lindra, how they valued peace and wisdom. Jarek spoke of Earth's struggles, its fierce battles, and moments of hope. She saw him laugh softly at a memory. It was the first time she heard a real smile in his voice. Later, they walked through the palace gardens. The glowing flowers lit their path like stars on the ground. Lyra showed him her favorite flowers and explained their meanings. Jarek listened carefully, fascinated by the delicate beauty of a world so unlike his own. When they reached a quiet pond, Jarek sat on a stone bench. "You have a calm strength," he said. "I always thought strength was about fighting, but maybe it is also about patience." Lyra looked at him, surprised. "You are learning." He smiled, a little shy. "You are teaching me." In those unseen moments, away from the eyes of the court, something new began to grow. A bond formed not from duty, but from understanding and respect. As the night deepened, they parted with a promise to learn more about each other and maybe, one day, to trust. Back in her room, Lyra felt hope stirring. The brutal human might be more than a warrior. He might be the partner she had feared, but also the ally she needed. The peace of the palace was shattered the next day. As Princess Lyra and Captain Jarek prepared to leave for a diplomatic meeting on the edge of Vilindran space, alarms rang throughout the building. The dreaded rebels who opposed the marriage were making a move. Jarek's eyes narrowed. "Stay close to me," he said quietly but firmly to Lyra. The royal convoy rushed through the city streets toward the meeting ship. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the path ahead. Rocks and debris blocked the road. The rebels had set a trap. Without hesitation, Jarek pushed Lyra behind a nearby wall. His military training showed in every move. Fast, precise, and confident. "Keep calm," he told her, scanning the area. "We need to get through this." Lyra's heart pounded, but she trusted him. Watching Jarek in action was like seeing a different side of him. Not the cold, brutal warrior, but a protector who fought to keep others safe. A group of rebels appeared, armed and dangerous. Jarek stepped forward, raising his hands in a calm but commanding gesture. "Stop. You don't have to do this." The rebels hesitated, unsure, but one fired a shot. Jarek moved like lightning, dodging the attack and disarming the rebel with skill. The fight was quick but fierce. Lyra saw the strength and control in Jarek's actions. He didn't fight out of anger, but out of necessity. His every move was about protecting life, not destroying it. When the last rebel was captured, Jarek turned to Lyra. "Are you all right?" She nodded, breathless. "Thanks to you." They continued to the meeting ship, the danger now behind them. Inside, the mood was tense but hopeful. The diplomats waited, impressed by Jarek's bravery and calm under pressure. During the talks, Lyra and Jarek worked together smoothly. Jarek's military experience helped them anticipate threats, while Lyra's knowledge of diplomacy guided the conversations. They made a strong team. After the meeting, as they returned to the palace, Leora looked at Jarek with new respect. The man she feared was not just a warrior. He was a protector, a partner. Jarek caught her gaze and smiled softly. "I'm glad we faced this danger together." "Me too," Leora replied. "Maybe this marriage is more than just politics." That night, as the stars shone over Valindra, the princess and the brutal human found a connection that went beyond stories and rumors. They had seen each other's true strength, the strength to protect, to trust, and maybe to care. The morning light spilled softly into the palace room, where Princess Leora sat quietly, waiting. Captain Jarek was coming to visit her before the day's events. Leora felt a mixture of nerves and curiosity. She wanted to know more about the man behind the serious eyes and strong frame. When Jarek arrived, he looked different in the calm morning light. His face was less guarded, and his eyes held a depth that caught Leora's attention. "I thought we should talk," he said quietly. "There are things you don't know about me." Leora nodded, inviting him to sit beside her. Jarek took a deep breath. "I grew up on Earth, in a world very different from yours. War has touched my life many times. I lost family, friends, many people I cared about." His voice was soft, almost sad. "That is why I fight. Not for glory, but to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Leora listened closely. She could see the pain behind his strength, the weight he carried with him every day. "People see me as brutal because I am willing to do what others cannot," he continued. "But I have a code. I do not fight without reason. I do not hurt the innocent." Leora's heart softened. She had always believed in the power of peace, but now she understood that sometimes strength was necessary. "Your world sounds hard," she said gently, "but I see why you are strong." Jarek smiled faintly. "And your world is beautiful, peaceful. I want to learn more about it, and about you." For a moment, silence filled the room. It was comfortable, like two people sharing a secret. Then Leora spoke. "I was afraid of you before, but now I want to know everything. About your fears, your hopes." Jarek reached out and took her hand lightly. "Maybe together we can find a way to build a future, one not only of peace but of understanding." Leora squeezed his hand, feeling warmth and hope spread inside her. That day, the palace felt different to her. No longer just a place of duty and rules, but a place where two very different worlds could come together. As Jarek left to prepare for the day's meetings, Leora watched him go, her fear replaced by respect and a growing connection. She whispered softly, "Maybe this brutal human is exactly what Valindra needs." Days passed, and the palace began to feel less like a place of duty and more like a place of connection. Princess Leora and Captain Jarek were spending more time together, not just as future husband and wife, but as two people learning to understand each other. One morning, Jarek stood in the palace training hall, watching Leora practice basic combat moves. She moved carefully, her body graceful but not trained for battle. Jarek stepped forward, his voice calm and encouraging. "Let me show you a few things," he said. Leora nodded, curious but cautious. Jarek began teaching her simple defense techniques: how to move quickly, how to stay balanced, how to use strength wisely. At first, she struggled, but Jarek was patient. His lessons were not about fighting, but about confidence and trust. "You don't have to be a warrior to protect yourself," he explained. "But knowing how to defend yourself helps you feel safe." Leora smiled, feeling a new kind of strength growing inside her. After training, they walked through the palace gardens. Leora showed Jarek more of her world: the ancient trees, the shimmering lakes, the songs of the Valindran birds. In return, Jarek shared stories about Earth. He told her about wide forests, endless oceans, and crowded cities full of life and noise. Leora listened, fascinated by the differences and the similarities. At times, they laughed together. At times, they disagreed, but always they listened. Their conversations grew deeper. They talked about their hopes for peace, their fears of failure, and the heavy weight of their responsibilities. In these moments, the walls between them fell away. One evening, as the twin moons rose high in the sky, Leora looked at Jarek thoughtfully. "Do you think we can really make this marriage work?" she asked quietly. Jarek looked at her with steady eyes. "I don't know what the future holds," he said honestly, "but I want to try. Not just for our peoples, but for us." Leora felt her heart lift. For the first time, she believed that the man called Brutal was someone she could trust, and maybe even care for. Their bond was no longer just about duty or politics. It was becoming something real. The palace walls, once cold and distant, now felt warmer with hope. Together, they were learning that true strength comes from more than power. It comes from understanding, respect, and the courage to open one's heart. The palace buzzed with whispers and quiet meetings. Not everyone was happy about the marriage between Princess Leora and Captain Jarek. Some powerful nobles saw the human alliance as a threat to Valindra's traditions and their own influence. Leora and Jarek soon realized their biggest challenge was not just learning to trust each other, but facing those who wanted to stop their union. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace corridors, a royal advisor approached them with a grave look. "Princess, Captain," he said carefully, "there are rumors of a plot against your marriage. Some members of the court want to break the alliance." Leora's eyes widened. Why would they do this? The advisor sighed. "They fear change. They believe humans are too violent and will harm Valindra's way of life." Jarek's jaw tightened. "They are wrong." Leora took a deep breath. "We must show them the truth." Together, they began to work. Leora used her diplomatic skills to speak with nobles and leaders. She reminded them of the benefits of peace and the strength that came from unity. Jarek met with the palace guards and shared his experience as a leader. He helped strengthen the palace's security and trained the soldiers to be ready for any threats. One evening, a secret meeting was discovered. A group of nobles planned to create chaos during the upcoming peace celebration. Leora and Jarek acted quickly. With careful planning, they caught the conspirators before they could cause harm. The palace was safe, and the people saw the strength of their leaders. After the event, Leora stood before the gathered crowd. "We are stronger together," she said with confidence. "Fear and hate will not divide us." Jarek nodded beside her. "We will protect Valindra and our future." The crowd erupted in applause. Slowly, the doubts began to fade. Though the opposition was not gone, Leora and Jarek had shown courage and unity. They proved that their bond was more than a political tool. It was a promise of hope. That night, as they looked out over the city lights, Leora smiled at Jarek. "Together, we can face anything." Jarek returned her smile. Together,